Hello, welcome to our session talking about engaging young people in virtual spaces. We're glad that you're here to learn a little bit with us today. We are a team from Youth Move National, and the work that we do is in the acronym of our name, MOVE, all about motivating others through voices of experience. We are going to be talking about engaging young people in online and virtual spaces today. The impetus for today's session is definitely the experiences in 2020 and 2021, where we have been required and challenged to move what has usually been in-person youth engagement opportunities online. Throughout today's session, we're going to be thinking about this in two ways. One is that we were and have successfully pivoted to engaging young people online. And we're going to be talking about some of the challenges and some of the things that have worked really well in that pivot. And we really want us all to be thinking about the fact that even as a new normal is being developed for us, and we look forward to moving to a place and time where youth engagement is occurring in person, we know that we're never truly going to leave behind the virtual experiences we've had. So at Youth Move, our team is thinking a lot about how do we take the most successful components of virtual online engagement with us into the future, into the new normal, where we might be developing programming that's a mixture or a hybrid of in-person or online engagement. So with both of those lenses, we will be approaching today's content. A little bit about who we are and where we come from. The Youth Move team is a team working across the country, and our chapter network is working in many communities to infuse youth voice and lived expertise of youth serving systems into policymaking and decision-making around improving those systems. We are a youth-driven, chapter-based organization dedicated to improving all youth serving systems. To us, that includes mental health, child welfare, juvenile justice, special education, and other places where young people are turning to for support and services. We believe that those with lived experience from these youth serving systems are the key decision makers and stakeholders we need at the table to design a more positive future. I'm Johanna, and I'm joined here by my colleague, Matt. We're both on the National Youth Move team. We're in this work from our own experiences as youth advocates early in our lives, and now as advocates for youth, helping communities like yours deepen your youth engagement and youth voice strategies. Today, we're going to cover several areas of content. We really want to start by thinking about how we outreach to young people. So sometimes we are creating virtual online spaces and we're inviting youth to those spaces for the first time. And our invitations might be online and virtual as well. Other times we might be asking young people that we're already in relationship with to join us in a new way in online spaces. So how do we get creative about this outreach and recruitment strategy? The second thing we want to spend some time talking with you all about is how do we create successful online spaces and what's hard about making community online. So we'll talk about some barriers and share some strategies to make our online meeting spaces really effective and work. And then we finally want to talk about how we co-create with young people spaces online that young people want to engage in. What are they looking for, and how do we choose platforms, mediums, and strategies that help young people benefit from what they need. So let's get started. We'll be sharing ideas, examples, and resources with you throughout today's session. And we hope everyone can complete this session walking away with a couple of tangible strategies that you can enact in your community right away. So first, let's get started thinking about that outreach and recruitment. We think about this in two ways. So first is, who are we already involved with? Right? So if we are members of a Washington State Regional FYSPRT Council, we already have a number of partners around our table, and those partners might already be actively engaging and inviting young people into our work. The second thing we want to think about is, who are we not partnering with that we know we would benefit from partnering with. So who else across our community and region might really be optimal partners? They might be connected to young people. They might be really good recruitment partners in inviting young people into our space. So first, who are we already networked with? And second, who do we want to be networked with in order to increase our youth engagement strategy? Matt, what do you think about when we think about our already engaged partners and how they might help us in increasing our youth voice?
So we know that some of those examples already are, especially in Washington, we have our WISE teams and other outpatient providers. Schools are a big connector resource. We know that young people are already going to be there. So we're going to connect with the administration there and have those relationships. FYSPRT meetings that are already happening, connecting to those. Community and wellness fairs that are happening in the community. So looking at events with our partners that are already happening, it's always easier to attach onto something that's already being managed because we may not have the time or resources, but there may be another connector that we can say, hey, can we have a table, or can we, send a staff member and partner in that space. Other community groups that are happening for young people, other youth leadership or youth type programs, religious services sometimes, and other state agencies as well. We know that a lot of the folks are probably already connected to those. So lean into those resources if you're having struggles finding people to show up to your meetings. And then some places that maybe you might already be, but aren't. And some of those that were just listed, maybe you specifically aren't. So those are some good places to start because they're kind of the defaults. If we think about mental health, behavioral health services, those are the folks who are going to have the same language and understanding of our goals. So are probably the easiest to attach to. But there are some other creative spaces, public libraries, tribes that are in the community, teen courts, social media platforms. There might be, and that's what I was saying before, there might be folks you're already connected with and they may have a big social media presence. So maybe attaching on there, cross advertising your events or your meetings in those spaces. Yeah, and then again, like if you're not connected to the school, or you are, there might be other parts of the school that you could connect to too, after school groups, classrooms. So you might be connected to just the guidance counselor office, but there might be other spaces within the school system that might be an entry point. And then in the larger community, when I was working in Maine, I had a connection with the roller derby team, and we had a youth leadership group, and they really wanted to have a discussion with older community members about intergenerational work. They felt like people in the community didn't value the work that they did because it's a different type of work. You're using computers versus manual labor, and there was sort of this perception about young people don't work as hard because of the types of work they might be doing. So I was able to talk to some of the folks on the roller derby team that I knew, one being a lawyer and one being a professor, and they came to that discussion, and we had a really cool cross collaboration of younger community members and older community members talking about what work looked like when they were younger and what work looked like now, and then young people kind of just getting into the workforce. So there may be some unique sports teams or other, like I was saying, like religious groups, Sunday schools. There's going to be other spaces in your community that you may not be tapping into that could really have some thriving spots for community connection.
That's great. Thanks for sharing all those examples, Matt. In the resources along with this video, we'll share a recruitment guide, and it's set up as a workbook in two ways. One is what is the invitation we're crafting to young people to invite them into our youth change-making work. And the second is what's the message that we're asking for our community partners to use when they might be introducing the work of our FYSPRT or of our youth groups to young people that they engage with? So I think about it being just like an in-person youth engagement. In our virtual spaces, we want to both directly invite young people, and we want to make sure that our community partners are activated to invite young people that they're connected with. That ripple effect of continuing to expand our youth networks. And Matt, I love that you're challenging us to get creative, right? So we know we're really well partnered with our behavioral health agencies. Are we as well partnered with the other youth serving organizations or youth-led spaces that might exist in our community? So the challenge really here is to think about who is just outside of our network that we could reach in to tap into to extend the invitations to young people to engage us in our work.
So next we want to talk about creating virtual youth space. And when we talk about virtual, I think sometimes we can get kind of pigeonholed into thinking like that's social media. It's like, what are we posting? But really when we say virtual, I mean, it's anything online, and it is our mobile devices. It's any type of communication tool that we're using to do that outreach and that engagement. You know, like we're used to using email as professionals. We might be using texting if we're connecting with young people, and we'll talk about some safe ways to do that in a little while as well. But you want to make sure that you're choosing a platform or a tool that makes sense. If you have a Facebook page and you use Facebook Messenger, but the group or the youth in your community aren't really in that space, then you're like, oh, I'm trying, but that's not really where young people are looking to communicate. It might be that you're texting them for a little while, or it might be that you're using one of those partners that you already have to connect to young people, and then asking them like, hey, if we're gonna have this meeting or this event, what would be the best way to communicate with you? It's probably not going to be the phone call. I don't even like the phone call. So yeah, so it's, and young people might not know because they might think in their head like, okay, well, I talk to my friends on Snapchat and that doesn't really seem like the appropriate venue for connecting with you. So it might require some brainstorming and sharing, well, this is how I communicate with some other people. Would that work with you? And they're like, well, I've never used that. Or maybe they're sharing, have you ever used WhatsApp? And you're like, well, I don't know what that is. So it could be learning one way or the other way that's creating what the perfect platform for that relationship might be. And you're going to want to set up that space in a continual way. You don't want to use 15 different platforms. So hopefully there's a way that you can come to consensus as a group once that's established. But you want to set up a space that matches the needs and the wants of your group too. Oftentimes as professionals, we're like, oh, we want to do a focus group, or we want feedback because that's what our grant's requiring, or that's what we're meant to do as professionals. And so we want to make sure that our goals are aligning with the goals of the young people. Otherwise, they aren't going to show up. So if we're just like, hey, we want you to come review our evaluation tool, the jargon embedded in that is probably not going to get a young person to the table. But if before that you have a game night and you're wanting to, I don't know, set up a Fortnite competition and young people are coming to that space, that's a place to have more casual conversations and then get them kind of in the door and then say, hey, like we really would love some feedback about, this thing that we're doing, and then explain it in that way. It doesn't have to be that like, sprinkles, the pill hidden in the ice cream kind of a thing, but there's a variety of ways to get young people in the door. So game night's a great one. Creative expression projects are really good because it's a way to get feedback while doing something fun. Our Children's Mental Health Awareness project this year, we shared a toolkit for a project called Identity, which is a photography and written word project, asking young people in the community what it's like to be them. We've done this project with homeless shelters. We've done it with career development services, and asking young people what it's like to be out there. What are the perceptions that adults have of you as a young person? And that's a way to get at maybe mental health services and other things that you are looking for feedback on, and they're sharing their story as well. You can have internships, you can start a blog, start a YouTube channel or TikTok videos. There's a lot of creative things you can do where you're getting at maybe some of the things that you want to while having fun in the process. A movie night that may be a film that prompts discussion. And then it's okay to have a focus group as well to say like, hey, we really want feedback, but it's best to kind of make sure you're setting up that relationship first. Because if you just have a flyer that says focus group, that's probably not going to be as attractive as something like, hey, we're doing this cool art project and we're looking for youth experiences in our community.
Matt, I want to lift up just a couple of things that you said that I think are so important, right? And the first is sort of core to what we believe is important to youth engagement at Youth Move. And that is that young people come into this work in making change, wanting different things. Yes, young people want an opportunity to share their lived expertise and help you provide better services and supports. They also want to have fun while they're doing it, right? The social aspects are important. We want to build those into the youth programming that we're offering. And third, young people want to see that success is happening, that change is happening. And we need all three of those things: opportunity to be heard, opportunity to have fun and create a positive peer experience, and the opportunity to see success in order to keep coming back. And the second thing I want to uplift, Matt, is that you're really challenging us to think about those three things might need different communication platforms or different online mediums to make them happen, right? So we've all become really accustomed to using Zoom, and yet sometimes Zoom might not be able to get us to all three of those goals that young people are really looking for. So being really intentional about the platform we're selecting with young people in order to meet the goal that's in front of us. And I also love, we'll share the identity toolkit facilitation guides, which have been totally flipped to work for completely online virtual engagement, if that's where you are in your community. That concept that the creative art project can actually be the same strategy that gets really important youth voice input into your work. Like, it's one project for the young people, and it's hitting all of the goals of having fun, expressing ourselves, and also creating change. So thanks for sharing that specific example with us, Matt.
So, and then just a couple other quick specific examples of a way to creatively approach either your marketing or your outreach. Our Youth Move chapters especially over the last year and a half, have found really creative ways to use Instagram and social media to check in when they're not able to meet in person. I know our Youth Move Massachusetts chapter had posted throughout 2020 just saying, hey, I'm in the office and I'm working on some cool projects and we really miss you. Hope that you're doing well. And it was like a 40-second video just saying, it's a familiar face, it's checking in. It allows the young people that you're connected to see, hey, like, they're still out there as just like a tacit connection point, like they still exist, and they're doing something. But then also that, like, hey, they're also checking in on me and they're kind of sharing their experience. And maybe somebody direct messages you, or there's a way to like reconnect in those spaces as well, to continue that happening. And now it's a way to also bridge regular, maybe in-person meetings or virtual meetings without like an official meeting. It's a way to like do that quick check-in. Creating social marketing campaigns with short videos. On the screen, you'll see a FAB pilot study, and this is the Fast and Brief, which is kind of a fun name. But they took this flyer where they're looking for feedback, which was just a 5-minute survey. And they had young people who were involved in this program just take their cell phones, and they gave them a script, and then they cut it together. It was a minute video just sharing what is the FAB study, why are we doing it? And you're seeing young people who are engaged and excited about giving their feedback to mental health services. And this was in Oregon. Flyers are great and it gets all the information kind of out there, but a video, anything that's video or audio, visual or audio, is gonna hit a little bit harder as far as recruitment or impact. And then it kind of makes it more of a PSA than just a flyer. And it doesn't take a lot of effort either. I mean, most people have a cell phone, so you can just grab your cell phone and make a short video.
Yeah, I love, Matt, really you're challenging us to say, if our traditional way of outreach was a paper or a printed flyer, how do we add or like make that more three-dimensional with audio and video messages without getting complicated with, we don't need a whole videography team, just a cell phone and, hey, I'm talking to you, Matt. It's been a little while since we've been in person. I'd love to invite you to this event. Can be such a compelling ask as compared to, I got a flyer that should have been printed, but it came in my email, right? So getting a little bit more creative with that outreach is a great recommendation.
And I think that works with our communication tools as well. I think a lot of young people are used to FaceTime or Snapchat or video messages. So a text might work, but even sending a quick video message of like, hey, it's me, like may have a different impact than just a text or some other mode of communication.
That's great. So we've been talking a little bit about outreach and engagement, and we want to shift now to talk more about setting up online meeting spaces and online communities that really will work for young people. So first, we're going to start about we're going to talk about what we need to do before meetings happen.
So a lot of this is kind of prep that we would do in person as well. So we try to emulate that experience as much as possible. And there might be a few caveats to, okay, if it's virtual, it might be a little bit different. For example, you're going to want to call or text participants. I know when I was doing community outreach, I had to call everybody who signed up. I would call 2 days before to make sure that they didn't need, do they have transportation? Do they have everything that they need? We are going to be providing like a lunch or a snack or something, just so they were coming into the space knowing and being prepared. But they were getting that reminder as well, that check-in, because sometimes you have 10 people saying they're going to come and then sometimes 2 people show up. So it's a little extra bit of reminding and a little bit of accountability if somebody says they're going to come, that you're like checking in saying, hey, just want to make sure you're going to be there and that you have everything that you're going to need. For virtual engagement, making sure that they're going to have a space that they can interact and have good internet access, maybe necessary as well. So that might be, hey, maybe they have to be at the library or some other kind of resource. You want to make sure that before that everybody, the meeting time is good for everybody. So we use tools like Calendly or Doodle Poll. And that's a quick, easy way to send a link and kind of say like, especially during the school year, if it's going to be nights or weekends that you might have a weekend a meeting, then it might look a little bit different. So and then make sure that you're giving as much prep beforehand as possible. A list of acronyms. If it's FYSPRT, like what does that mean? If it's somebody's first meeting, what is the regional council? There might be terms or definitions. The agenda to show how long it's going to be, what to expect when they show up. If it's their first time, they might not feel as comfortable participating. So is there going to be a lot of discussion? Is it going to be mostly informational? So that they can come into the space having as much information and feel as comfortable as possible.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. And just doubling down on that recommendation for a text message to just continue to let young people know really are and invested, and it's important to us that they can participate. And there's that a little bit easier. We'll talk about some other options in a moment. So Matt, about what we do before to make everything well, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do during a meeting. So similarly, I think about hosting and facilitating online community much in the way I think about hosting events in person. So just like I might go to a room in a community center to make sure that the tables and chairs are set and that I've written welcome on the whiteboards, I do the same thing in virtual meetings. So as the host, setting up your Zoom room or whatever online platform you're using, can you have music playing, streaming across your shared audio to welcome folks into this space? Do you have a big welcome slide shared on your screen, just like you might have a poster on the door at a community center? So creating space for that just sort of informal, you're welcome, you're coming into a fun space where we're going to be communal and social with each other. We think about setting that up as we open online meeting space. Welcome everyone to get comfortable, right? I always invite people, do anything that you would do in an in-person meeting here. So drink a cup of coffee, feel free to get up and stretch. Let's all grab a snack and just enjoy a little bit of food together online. I always recommend warm-up space. So something like welcoming exercises, icebreakers. They can be, informal and just let us connect socially in a way that's different than our work, or they can be really connected to the work of the meeting in front of us. But make sure that we spend time in that warm-up phase and we don't immediately just start this agenda that has, 17 points that we have to get through. When we're building online space, which I think all of you are, that will exist across many different meetings, we want to spend time in our first meeting establishing our group identity, establishing our community norms, right? So this might look like creating a shared community agreement together that helps us all ask and offer to each other what we need to do to make a space safe, effective, fun, transparent for everyone that's there. If you're going to be working with young people where you're going to be opening up the space for individuals to share from their own lived experience, we really suggest some time and energy in establishing expectations around strategic sharing. So my goal would be that everyone in the room knows if the meeting's being recorded, if notes are being taken, where are those notes going to go? What's our practice of direct quotation versus sort of summary of experience that might have some anonymity to it? We want to set up in our ground rules really fair practices so every young person knows, is this a space where I can share really bravely, or is this a space where I should share more safely? And that's all something that we can establish at an initial meeting, and then we can continue to return to and repeat and remind ourselves at our next meetings. We definitely recommend asking young people to take the mic across all of our agendas. So looking for ways to intentionally have young people co-facilitate the meeting space. This can definitely happen by in your prep work, working with young people to plan the agenda and design the facilitation approach, and then the entire meeting can be led by young people. Or it can be a strategy where our supportive adults may set up that agenda and create space, but then within our practice of meeting, continually inviting young people into the facilitation role, offering that mic over. There's ways to set up your agenda where the expectation is that we're going to pass this facilitation mic around, and that can really create a more equalized table where young people feel encouraged and emboldened to share. I do think oftentimes questions that we get at Youth Move are, how do we make sure that everyone feels safe in a meeting, right? I think the ground rules, the community norms, community agreements that we might identify are a key part of that. But there are other strategies that we can use. So when we're going to have a big online meeting space, we'll oftentimes identify one team member to be the peer support. And we might even change our name. So my Zoom name might be Johanna, Youth Peer Support. And then we indicate and invite young people to say, that's the person to send a direct message to if something's coming up for you, or if you need some support processing, or you just need like 5 minutes chill time. We really want to make sure that everyone knows who's their person to go to in the room. As facilitators, we set up our online rooms just like we might in-person rooms. So where's the hallway, right, to our meeting? Where's the room down the hallway where we can just like sit and have a youth peer discussion? In Zoom, we can do that with breakout rooms, right? And have an easy, I want to opt into that hallway breakout room so I can just have a moment of support before I come back. Other times we want to be really intentional that we're setting up space for young people to share and engage in our work, but we may not be resourced, or this might not be the best place to support or ask for additional mental health support access. And in that case, we say it up front. We'll drop messages in the chat, and then we'll let young people know this is where you can go in your community. This is a text line for support. This is an in-person support request that you could make in your community, and help young people navigate that request in a more appropriate way. So we think about just being really transparent with young people about what is this space set up to do, what are the supports we can offer for you right here, and here's who else in your community that can support you with anything that you might need. Other things we think about when we're setting up online spaces is just like in person, incorporate some movement, right? We are oftentimes creating agendas that fit in 60 minutes or 90 minutes time. Our bodies want to move after a half an hour or so. So building in a little bit of a stretch break, chair yoga. If you're not comfortable leading, a 4 or 5 minute yoga practice, there are plenty of videos that you can access and stream just through a shared video stream. I've been a part of great meetings where someone's the dance party DJ, and their job is to pick a really great tunes and get everyone up and moving. So just like we would think about how to create movement and physical experiences in our in-person, let's do that in our online communities as well. And then creativity, and the best creativity comes from young people. So when somebody starts a GIF war talking about like, how can we communicate our ideas just in GIFs, let it happen, right? Follow young people's lead. We love to give little virtual gifts, just like we might offer pens and pencils and notepads and a little candy in an in-person meeting. Zoom backgrounds like we have today are a really great way to sort of build community identity, help young people express who they are. And that has sent our Zoom backgrounds as that sort of virtual gift or thank you to participants. So we love to encourage you to get creative in how we can share ideas within the meeting that can also then sort of extend beyond the meetings that we're having with young people. So many ways to think about online engaging, making meetings online and engaging and fun. There's many ideas. We just encourage you to plan and be intentional about creating that space, just like you would have in your in-person experiences.
Yeah, and I would also probably note, and this is a little bit before and during, is sometimes you have a specific agenda and it might flow somewhere else. And it's important to have that flexibility that you're like, oh, we really need this feedback, because again, you do have things that you need to get done as professionals and goals that you need to hit, and metrics you might need to hit. But you're probably going to do, you're gonna turn everything a little bit left if you keep trying to get back to that point and it's going a different way. So just making sure that you have that flexibility. It's okay to turn the cart back onto course here and there as well, but negotiating that space so that you're getting some stuff done, but also going where the group is taking you is really important, because it might lead to a different place that also ends up where your goal is that you may not have expected, because it just took a different direction. So it's important to kind of have expectations or things that you want to get done, but being flexible with if they don't go exactly the way you plan as well. And then after you're done, it's really important for young people when you're trying to develop that relationship, especially if it's their first or second meeting, is to follow up with them. We're talking about that, what's happening in between those meetings. It could just be the notes and say hey, I wanted to share what we went over last time. Looking forward to our next meetings. Or any questions you have. It doesn't have to be anything to involve, but just a connection point. And if it's going to be a long time before the next meeting, maybe there's one other additional follow-up. Just again, like I was saying before the meeting, hey, is there anything you need? Are you able to get here? Does this date and time still work for you? Those kinds of things. And then when you're done, there might be some other things that you can do that might be next to your goals that will keep young people involved and engaged. So maybe developing a social marketing campaign that youth can work on out of the group. And that's maybe something that you can talk about in the group and everybody walks away with like a small assignment. It might be like, find some pictures for a slideshow, or it might be, you know, find 2 songs or something. So something like that's not cumbersome or, you know, too much work, but that they're coming with a goal. They feel like they've participated. They know they're going to come to that next meeting and they might not want to miss out because they're like, somebody's relying on me to bring the 2 songs that I was supposed to pick for the slideshow we're going to make. So just involving, but without it being obviously too much work. And then as you work and build that relationship, those asks can maybe be bigger because they're more involved and kind of integrated into your program. Creating other opportunities within your organization or your group, paid internships, maybe job openings. I know that funding is always an issue for people, but maybe there's some small local grants or sponsorships that you can get to have young people even do your social media page, even if it's a couple hours a week to post Instagram stories or something like that, where they can have an impact and they can get something out of it too by getting paid, or building a portfolio. There's other ways that young people can feel like they're being of value to the group and they're getting something out of it as well. Do evaluation, and that doesn't mean that, you know, like that's like a big survey at the end of every meeting. It might be one question, it might be just a debrief after each thing, but you want to make sure that you're recording the information you're getting. And like Johanna was saying earlier, making sure young people know in what way that's being recorded. But you want to make sure that you're taking notes to see, again, where that flexibility can come in, because, you know, maybe the times aren't working for young people and that's why they're not showing up. Or maybe there's not enough breaks or it's not fun, you know? So like getting that feedback about how to change your meetings over time is going to be valuable to both you and the experience of young people. And then use virtual platforms in between to stay connected. And it might be, maybe it's once a week you post an Instagram photo, or maybe it is just a text, or we'll talk about some different communication tools in just a second. It might be utilizing one of those platforms to stay connected and engaged in between meetings. So.
That's great, Matt. And I love that you're just really reminding us that we're inviting young people into our work. We're not inviting young people into a one and done meeting or a once a month meeting that doesn't have relationship in between, right? There really needs to be relationship and engagement in between the sort of specific events that we might be thinking about as our meetings or the structure of our group.
Yeah, young people will know if they're sort of feeling tokenized and that they're just being brought because, hey, we need some feedback from young people in the community. So we reached out to, you know, some BHPs and they got young people here, and then we took their feedback and then we didn't follow up and we didn't create space and time that was bigger than just this thing. We're obviously, sometimes we don't always have the resources to do everything, but we want to make sure we're being intentional and authentic about that relationship that we're trying to build. So some examples and ideas for creating those spaces that we're talking about, like we said, sending messages to your group and the platform that we'll talk about different platforms in a moment. You know, it might not have anything to do with a meeting. It might just be, hey, was thinking about you, or maybe they shared something about a big project they had coming up, or something's like, hey, hope that project went well. It doesn't have to be a huge time investment, but I think just a quick touchstone in between those meetings is really valuable. And then young people see like, oh, they are listening and they cared and they valued what I was sharing, and care about what's happening in my life. On your social media or your spaces that you have them, sharing posts about what you're up to Again, it's sort of like, hey, we're alive, like we were saying earlier, but it's also if there are items that are coming out of the work you're doing that's related to the groups they're in, then they'll say, oh, hey, like that's cool. Like we were talking about that, or there's a quote that came out of one of the meetings or something. They're kind of seeing the work that they're doing or the things that they're sharing reflected in your pages and your spaces that they're part of. Creating small polls to share, and that can be with young people, and that could be that evaluation piece we were talking about, or it could be even with partners when you're starting that outreach in the beginning of like, are you connected with young people, and are they interested in like movie nights, or are they interested in talking about mental health, are they interested in anti-stigma campaigns, like kind of seeing what your partners know about youth that they're connected to, and then you can start doing that yourself when they're young people at your table. We've talked a little bit about creative projects, but starting a blog, and that might be you starting it, and then once you get young people, maybe they're the authors in that space. When I was the manager at Youth Move Maine, we had a social media journalism internship, and so we had 4 young people that were in that internship. They got a stipend every week. And they rotated. So once a week, they would write something that was going on in their community, something about mental health. There was a variety of topics. So it was really once a month, they would write an article, and it would go on our webpage. They got authorship credit, they got paid, and they got to share either their story or something that was going on in their community. Hosting a podcast might be a little bit heavier of a lift, but young people telling their stories with their voice, with their actual voice, sometimes can be very powerful as well. And there's a lot of cool free programs like Anchor out there that can make it a lot easier and not daunting, that you can just use your laptop or your phone to record and publish and put out there. This might be more for your partner network, but starting a newsletter, and that could be some of the stuff that comes out of the evaluation that you're doing to share, hey, here's what we're learning about the community and what gaps there might be in services, or successes we're seeing that are happening in the community. Creating a YouTube channel. When we were talking earlier about turning your flyers into PSAs, that's a good space to put those up and share those out through other social media. Because I think that, again, like anything that's audio or visual, people are going to connect to a little bit more. And if they're short, especially, it saves you time that you don't necessarily need to have like a designer for a flyer. And you're just saying, hey, our next meeting is, next Thursday, we're going to be talking about this. We're inviting all young people, 16 to 22, whatever the parameters are. And then the last thing is creating social spaces. There's a lot of different platforms, Twitch, Discord, we'll talk about a couple more, but just a place where young people can congregate in between. Or if you're all virtual right now, programs like Slack or Discord are a way that people can pop in, share a hello, or you can host meetings there. So it's kind of a hub for everything that you're going to need. And then you can have fun in there. You can host a virtual game night, have a virtual dance party, play board games, or do a host of other things.
Thanks for all these ideas, Matt. I'm especially for the first ideas you were talking about how we can take something that we might have done in youth group or youth meetings and use it for engagement in between. I just want to mention a few platforms that we use a ton at Youth Move. They include Menti, Kahoot. We use Mural. These are platforms that allow us to create content with young people in the meetings, not all just audio verbal discussion, right? But chances to write on virtual sticky notes or respond to poll questions or make word clouds. Oftentimes, those things can become really great imagery to share with or give back to young people. So you don't just send a bunch of written notes, but instead you could send the visualization of the work that we've done. So we'll include links to those platforms that are pretty easy to access and learn how to use. They'll make your in-person, the time you're spending with youth more engaging, and also leave you with pictures and imagery and responses that you can use for some of this in-person engagement. That's maybe a good segue, Matt, to talk about a few more platforms we want to make sure everybody knows about.
So these are just some examples of programs that we have either used or connected to. There are so many out there and so many more that came out during 2020 and 21 for people to connect and communicate with. Remind is probably one of the notable ones because that's a way to send group text messages to everybody without maybe necessarily everybody's phone number being displayed for everybody else. And it's a quick and easy way for you to send everybody a message at the same time, reminding them of an upcoming meeting. Again, you want to make sure that you're still creating one-on-one connections as well, and doing those kind of check-ins. But Remind is a great app for that. We've obviously used Zoom. Discord and Slack are great for those larger meetings that you're going to have, and you can connect video and gaming and other apps to them to make it a little bit more fun as well. So these may work for you. There may be other ones that young people that are already using in your community that might make more sense. Maybe there's a new one coming up tomorrow that is going to blow up and everybody's going to start using. But again, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about checking in with young people about what they're using and then maybe what you're using and having a negotiation of like what's going to work best for not just you or not just them, but like a group as well, to have ongoing communication. And then just some other things as tips. Make sure you are active on your social media outlets and that you're sharing with young people like, hey, you know, I don't know if you're using this, but we're posting a lot of the cool things that we're doing on Instagram. So you can check us out there. Creating a call to action, sometimes like having a specific, hey, we need young people 16 to 24 to talk about mental health services, you know, something very specific that people can say, hey, I'm part of that group and I would like to offer my voice. And then again, what we said before, but I think is so important and you can never reiterate enough, is having that follow up and checking in with young people after the meetings, and keeping that relationship going.
That's great. Matt, thanks for exposing us just to a few of the plethora of platforms that's out there, and just that callback to when you're selecting a platform, making sure it's helping you meet your meeting goals and that young people you're working with are like, yes, that's a place we want to show up to that works for us as well. So using those as our decision-making criteria.
Yeah, and it might be, you obviously don't want to be on 15 different platforms, but I know when I was working a lot more directly with youth that sometimes Facebook Messenger that's the only thing that they use. That's like they had their phone, they'd either text or use that. And then there were some people that you really had to call if you wanted to like get a hold of them, because, you know, so like it's individualized and you want to make sure that like there's something for the whole group, but know that you might need to be flexible and that if I'm going to get this young person to the table, like I might have to use this specific thing to communicate with them. And then weighing what that means as far as your capacity and the whole group and everything else. But it's likely that not everybody is going to be on Discord and you're going to be able to message everybody just there, or email. So having flexibility in your modes of communication is important too.
Thanks, Matt. We are nearing wrap up and want to leave you with just a few more resources. Everything that you're seeing on your screen now, we will drop into the resources. The first guide, Engaging Youth with Technology, goes over a lot of what Matt just said in thinking about what our platform's for and how to select them. Our tips and tricks in some of the blogging we've been doing this year, including facilitating and engaging in online meetings. There's some really great studies here, more from a research focus, that really show us that working with young people in online spaces works, and that young people do actually want to engage with us in this way, including in their mental health supports. And we just want to encourage everyone to remember that there are resources. So if you're feeling like you need a little bit of confidence booster or some practice with a platform, there are plenty of resources available for you all. And we want to leave you with a question and really a call to action. So after hanging out with us and thinking about this online engagement and the opportunities that are available to you, what can you start doing today? What's a practice in meeting prep or trying a new platform that you can walk away with and immediately start using as you engage young people in your work? We think there's something here for you, and we encourage you to try things, right? And step out into the world of online engagement with young people. We want to say thank you. Thank you for your commitment to engaging young people in your work, for valuing and understanding that lived expertise being engaged in our work will make our work better, and that we can create a future that works and is more supportive for young people. And we are glad to be partnered with you in this work. We are proud to have been and continue to support the work of youth engagement in Washington State and Regional FYSPRTs. We are a resource to anyone interested in engaging young people in change making. You can find us all of the places here. Matt and I would be happy to support you and are part of a larger team with a lot of expertise ready to support you. So don't be shy with questions and reach out. And until next time.
Thank you.